I'm fine. Thank you for having me back. Well, RSV stands for respiratory syncytial virus, and it's a very common infection. In fact, most kids get it at some point. It's just that a certain subset will get seriously ill from it. Right now, we're seeing very high number of cases across the world, frankly, and a high fraction of those cases needing hospitalization. Kids under 1 year are most at risk, mostly because of their underdeveloped airway system, as well as older adults. So it is a concerning development. Again, for most people, this is not a big deal, but for a certain subset of children, it can be quite serious. This is this is controversial. So there is a set of experts who talk about this thing they call immunity debt, which suggests that because we are protected for 2 years from infection by wearing masks and keeping away from each other, we haven't got sufficient population immunity to protect us when these old viruses come back again. There are at least two things wrong with that argument, to my mind. First is that places like Texas and Alabama and other red states where the COVID restrictions were not that severe are also seeing this phenomenon. And second, we actually saw a larger wave of RSV infection last year. So if there was any immunity debt to be paid off, one would think it was paid off last year and not this year. So another cadre of experts think this is actually COVID, that COVID has infected so many kids and has impaired their immune system to some degree that's caused them to be more susceptible to other viruses. And to support that argument, we have the situation where we have more hospitalizations now, but fewer cases than last year. No one knows the answer yet, but it's concerning. I think so. I think this is a long-term impact disease. And the fact that we're not containing it as we once were is concerning to me. We might be looking down the barrel of an epidemic of long-term disability caused by post-COVID syndrome. I don't know, but it is concerning. We still don't know a lot about this disease. Is it simply a respiratory virus? Is it a vasculitis? That's something that affects our cardiovascular system. Is it something that impairs brain function? We just don't know, but we're learning more every day. And mostly what we learn is not fun. 100%. Yeah, I mean, my concern is we don't have the political and public will to institute changes at that level again, should an emergency need it. What we do have now are the appropriate tools. We have vaccination, we have knowledge of masking and engineering tools like ventilation that we're not using to high degree. So the good news is we sort of know how to stop this and slow it at least. The bad news is we're not doing it to the extent that we could and should be doing. And the further good news is we are developing better vaccines coming around the corner, mucosal vaccines and pan-coronavirus vaccines. So there is definitely hope around the corner. But I'm hoping that our leaders are looking long term, 5, 10 years down the road, when the true impacts of the pandemic will be felt by our healthcare system. 100%. Now, this is strictly a Western phenomenon. Other nations have different challenges. Japan, for example, has very high compliance with voluntary mask wearing, so they're not seeing the same impact of COVID on their population that we're seeing. China famously has a more draconian approach, really closing things down severely. It's too early to know which approach will be the best one. But you're 100% right. Public health is the art of the possible, and what is possible is gated by what the public will tolerate and accept. Now, the caveat to that, of course, is the public will accept what is explained to them well by public health messaging. And we've done a poor job around messaging so far, particularly around the conflict between what is known, what is not known, what we are certain about, what we're uncertain about. It's a complicated soup of misinformation, disinformation, and proper information. It might be. So what this looks like is what we call a mucosal vaccine. If you inhale a vaccine, it uh, triggers the immune reaction where it first enters your body. So the respiratory system, your lungs, your throat, maybe your nasal passage. And the idea there is if that's how the virus gets into your body, and if that's where you're mounting your best immune reaction, then you can keep it out before it even infects you. And that's the ultimate goal here, is to prevent infection from happening in the first place. If we can achieve that, then that stops transmission right away. Um, we don't know if the Chinese vaccine actually has that ability because they have not been transparent with their data, but we have many attempts in the West to create similar things. So AstraZeneca famously had a failed attempt recently, but McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario has a pretty good-looking one. Other trials are underway for other mucosal vaccines against COVID. So I'm hopeful that we'll have something ready to trial in this country sometime next year or the year after. And if that's the case, then we're looking pretty good. We're also looking at pan-coronavirus vaccines, which would be good enough for this variant, the next variant, and all future variants. So again, there's good news coming down the highway if we keep our eyes on the biotechnology sector and keep it well funded. I wear a mask anytime I'm in a public indoor setting, shopping, going to my kids' daycare, going into houses I'm not confident about. And it's okay to wear a mask. It's good self-protection. It's protection for others. It's okay to be the weirdo in the room if you're the only person being masked. And I use ventilation tools like CO2 monitors to determine whether it's safe to take off my mask in a eating environment, for example. So again, we have the tools. Let's use them. Thank you.